Most women cry when they discover their husband's business trip is actually a romantic getaway with another woman. They throw his clothes on the lawn. They blast him on social media. They call lawyers in a rage. I didn't do any of that. I didn't shed a single tear. I didn't throw a single thing. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at the corporate housing agreement sitting on my desk. The one I signed, the one my firm pays for, the one that expires the exact day he gets back from Cabo. And I smiled. Because ownership isn't about who lives somewhere. It's about whose name is on the contract. And Cayson, my dear, ambitious, Instagram-perfect husband, had made the most expensive mistake of his life. He forgot to check the expiration date. My name is Briana Mitchell. I'm a senior partner at Hartwell & Associates, one of the most prestigious real estate law firms in the city. My world is built on three things: closing dates, terms of service, and the fine print nobody else bothers to read. I don't guess. I don't assume. I verify. That's how you survive and thrive in a profession where a misplaced comma can cost someone their entire fortune. My husband, Cayson, is what I call a lifestyle climber. He's handsome in that generic I could be motivational speaker way. Perfectly styled blonde hair. A closet full of linen shirts I bought him. A LinkedIn bio that screams visionary entrepreneur. Even though his last successful venture was convincing me to marry him. For 3 years, Cayson has lived in the gravity of my success. The $8,000 a month penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows? That's a corporate perk from my firm. The luxury car? Leased under my credit. The business trips to network with investors? Funded by our joint account. Which, let's be honest, is really my account with his name added out of matrimonial courtesy. He thought he was playing the game. Charming people at cocktail parties, dropping buzzwords like disruptive innovation and scalable solutions. But Cayson is what we call in the legal world a skimmer. He loves the view from the penthouse, but he never bothered to read the lease. He loves the lifestyle, but he has no idea how it's actually funded. And that's where he made his fatal error. In corporate housing agreements, the lease is tied to employment status and renewal signatures. If the named tenant, me, doesn't renew by the expiration date, the property reverts to the company or landlord. No grace period. No negotiation. You're just out. Cayson thought he was coming home from his week-long investor summit in Cabo to his queen, his penthouse, his life. He didn't realize he was coming home to a trespassing warning and a storage unit receipt. Because while he was sipping margaritas with Whitney, yes, I know her name, I was doing what I do best. Reading the fine print. And hitting the do not renew button. If you're enjoying this story and you want to see how Briana systematically dismantles her husband's entire life, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, this gets deliciously cold. Chapter 1. It started 3 weeks before Halloween. Cayson walked into the kitchen on a Tuesday morning with his laptop open, that rehearsed smile on his face that I'd learned to recognize over 3 years of marriage. "Babe, I have incredible news," he said, setting his laptop on the counter next to where I was reviewing a commercial lease agreement. "Remember that investor group I've been trying to connect with? Vanguard Capital?" I looked up from my work. "The West Coast one?" "Exactly. They're hosting an exclusive summit in Cabo San Lucas. October 24th through the 30th. It's invitation only, VCs, angel investors, serious money people. This could finally be the breakthrough my consulting business needs." His eyes were bright with excitement. Too bright. Like someone who'd been rehearsing this announcement. When honest people share good news, there's a natural simplicity to it. But liars, they over-explain. They give you the who, what, when, where, and why before you've even asked for the who. They're defending against questions you haven't raised yet because they're already worried about getting caught. "That sounds amazing," I said. "When would you leave?" "Thursday the 24th. Early morning flight. 6 days of intensive networking. Panel discussions, pitch sessions, one-on-one meetings with investors. This is exactly the kind of opportunity that launches careers." I smiled and said what he needed to hear. "I'm so proud of you, Cayson. This is what you've been working toward." His shoulders relaxed. I'd given him the validation he was looking for. "Thanks, babe. I really appreciate your support. Not every wife would understand how important these networking opportunities are for entrepreneurs." "Well," I said, turning back to my laptop, I understand how business works. And I did. Better than he realized. Over the next week I watched him prepare. He started going to the gym more frequently, or at least that's what he told me. He'd leave the penthouse in his workout clothes, gym bag over his shoulder, claiming he needed to get in shape before the trip, because first impressions matter with investors. He bought new clothes. Linen shirts in cream and pale blue. Expensive swim trunks. A new pair of sunglasses. All charged to our joint credit card, the one that was really just my money with his name added to it. You're packing a lot of resort wear for a business summit, I observed one evening as I watched him lay out options on our bed. It's Cabo, babe. Even the business events are casual. That's the beauty of West Coast investment culture. They value authenticity over stuffy corporate formality. Cayson, using the word authenticity, was rich. Like a counterfeit painting lecturing about artistic integrity. In my line of work, we train ourselves to spot inconsistencies. When someone's preparation doesn't align with their stated purpose, you take note. When spending increases suddenly without clear justification, you document it. When someone starts investing unusual amounts of time in their appearance before a business trip, you file it away as evidence of something deeper. Wednesday evening, the night before his supposed departure, he packed his suitcase in the walk-in closet. I watched from the bedroom doorway as he carefully folded his new linen shirts, his designer swim trunks, his expensive cologne. And then I saw it. Tucked between two shirts, a silk pajama set. The expensive one I'd bought him last Christmas that he'd never worn because he claimed it was too nice for regular use. That's when I knew with absolute certainty. Men don't pack silk pajamas for business conferences. They don't pack them for investor meetings. They pack them for one reason only. Someone else is going to see them wearing them. If you're watching this and you want to see exactly what Briana discovers when she starts investigating, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what she finds in the next chapter changes everything. You seem really excited about this trip, I said, keeping my voice casual. Cayson zipped up his suitcase and turned to me with that boyish grin that probably worked wonders on whoever he was actually planning to take to Cabo. I am, babe. I really think this is going to change everything for us. For our future. I hope you're right, I said. And I meant it. Because he was absolutely correct. This trip was going to change everything. Just not in the way he imagined. That night I lay awake next to him listening to him sleep. Tomorrow was Thursday. Tomorrow he'd claim he was going to the gym one more time before his flight. Tomorrow I'd have the apartment to myself. And tomorrow I was going to start digging. Cayson thought I was too busy with work to notice his lies. He thought I trusted him too much to check. He thought I was the kind of woman who'd take his business trip story at face value and never look deeper. He was catastrophically wrong. If you want to find out exactly how Briana pulls this off, hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about Cayson. Because Chapter 2 is where things get really interesting. Chapter 2. Thursday morning, 7:15 a.m. Cayson had left 30 minutes earlier, claiming he needed to hit the gym one more time before his flight. Want to burn off some energy before sitting on a plane for hours, he'd said, kissing my forehead like he'd done 1,000 times before. The moment the door closed behind him, I walked to our home office and opened the shared desktop computer. Our iCloud account was already logged in. A setup Cayson had insisted on 2 years ago for convenience, so we could share photos and documents easily. That convenience was about to become his downfall. I started with the Photos app. Most people don't realize that iCloud backs up everything. Screenshots, downloads, even recently deleted items. It's a digital graveyard of poor decisions, and cheaters are almost always technologically lazy. They'll construct elaborate verbal lies, but they forget about the data trail. There was a screenshot from 3 weeks ago. A text conversation between Cayson and someone saved as Whitney T. Can't wait for Cabo, baby. 6 days of just us. No interruptions. I know. I've been dreaming about waking up next to you without having to sneak out before sunrise. The resort looks amazing. That infinity pool is going to be perfect for us. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. I read each message with the same detachment I use when reviewing fraudulent contracts. This wasn't heartbreak. This was evidence. I scrolled further. More screenshots. Photos of a woman, Whitney presumably, with long blonde hair, spray tan, and that particular brand of confidence that comes from not paying your own bills. She looked younger than me, maybe 26, with an Instagram aesthetic that screamed, influencer wannabe. In one photo she was wearing a delicate gold necklace with a small diamond pendant. I recognized that necklace immediately, because I'd seen the receipt. I navigated to our shared Apple Card account. Joint credit cards create a permanent digital record of every single transaction. Date, time, location, merchant category. In legal proceedings, these records are invaluable. They show patterns of spending, proof of behavior, and most importantly, they demonstrate where money actually went versus where someone claimed it went. I filtered the transactions by date and started scrolling. There it was. Tiffany & Company, purchased October 2nd, $847. The exact day Cayson told me he was meeting with potential investors downtown. I clicked on the transaction details. The purchase was made at 2:47 p.m. at the Tiffany's location in the South Coast Plaza Shopping Center, nowhere near any legitimate business meeting. Then I found the receipt in his downloads folder. He'd actually saved it. The item description read, 18K gold solitaire diamond pendant necklace. The same necklace currently hanging around Whitney's neck in her Instagram photos. But the jewelry was just the beginning. I opened his email inbox, synced to our shared account. Southwest Airlines. Confirmation number. HKL 847. Departure. Thursday, October 24th, 6:45 a.m. Flight 2847 to Cabo San Lucas. Passengers. 2. Cayson Mitchell and Whitney Harrington. He'd booked her ticket on our joint credit card. He was literally funding his affair with my money, and he'd been careless enough to use our shared email for the confirmation. I took screenshots of everything. The text messages. The necklace receipt. The flight confirmation showing both names. The Apple Card transactions showing resort deposits, romantic restaurant reservations, and a couple's spa package that cost $1,200. Every single digital fingerprint of his betrayal, organized into a folder I titled, Evidence, Dissolution. In California, if one spouse uses community funds, money that belongs to both partners, for an extramarital affair, the other spouse can claim reimbursement for those funds in divorce court. Every dollar Cayson spent on Whitney could be recouped with interest. But I wasn't planning on traditional divorce court. I was planning something far more immediate. I pulled up the corporate housing agreement for our penthouse. The document was 37 pages long, and I'd read every single word when I signed it 3 years ago. Section 12, Paragraph C. Lease renewal must be submitted in writing to Hartwell and Associates Property Management no later than 30 days prior to lease expiration. Failure to renew will result in automatic termination of tenancy effective on the expiration date. Our lease expired October 31st. Today was October 24th. The renewal deadline had passed 2 days ago, October 22nd. And I hadn't signed it. I pulled out my personal phone and texted my assistant. Melissa, can you confirm that I never submitted the lease renewal for the Grand Avenue property? I need documentation that no renewal was processed. 3 minutes later, confirmed. No renewal on file. Property management sent 2 reminder emails in September. No response from your office. Should I follow up? No, I typed back. Leave it exactly as it is. I closed my laptop and sat back in my chair. Cayson's flight would take off in less than 2 hours. By tonight he'd be checking into that resort with Whitney, completely unaware that while he was unpacking his silk pajamas, I was preparing to erase his entire existence from the only address he'd called home for 3 years. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think Briana should do with all this evidence. Should she confront him immediately? Wait until he gets back? Or something else entirely? And if you want to see her execute the coldest revenge plan you've ever witnessed, hit that subscribe button now. I opened a new document and began making a list. Phone calls to make. Emails to send. Movers to schedule. Bank accounts to secure. Cayson thought he was getting away with something. He thought he was smarter than me, more cunning, more strategic. But I'd spent the last 10 years negotiating multi-million-dollar real estate deals with people who lie professionally. I'd gone toe-to-toe with developers who tried to hide environmental violations, landlords who forged tenant signatures, and investment firms that manipulated closing documents. Cayson was an amateur playing in a professional's game. His first mistake was forgetting that in the world of contracts and legally binding agreements, the person who controls the signature controls everything. And I was about to teach him that lesson in the most expensive way possible. Chapter 3. I drove Cayson to the airport at 5:15 a.m. He was excited, practically vibrating with nervous energy as he checked his bag one last time. I played my role perfectly, the supportive wife seeing her husband off on an important business trip. "You have your passport?" I asked as I pulled up to the Southwest terminal. "Got it. Chargers. Packed. Your presentation materials for the investors?" He paused just for a fraction of a second. "It's all digital. On my tablet." Of course it was. Because there were no investors. No presentation. No business summit. Just Whitney and her expectation of 6 days in paradise on my dime. He leaned over to kiss me. "You're the best, babe. Seriously. Not every wife would be this supportive of her husband's career ambitions." "Well," I said, smiling that smile I'd perfected in negotiation rooms, "I believe in investing in the future." He had no idea how true that statement was. I watched him walk through the sliding glass doors with his leather weekender bag and his fraudulent confidence, and then I drove exactly 3 blocks to a Starbucks, ordered an espresso and opened my laptop. First call. Rory Knight, the property manager at Hartwell & Associates. "Rory, it's Briana Mitchell. I need to discuss the Grand Avenue property." "Oh, Briana, yes. We've been waiting on your renewal paperwork. The deadline was actually 2 days ago, but I can still process it if you get it to me by end of business today." "That's why I'm calling," I said, my voice perfectly level. "I won't be renewing. I'm forfeiting the benefit effective October 31st. Silence. "Then, I'm sorry, did you say you're not renewing?" "Correct. I'd like to formally relinquish the corporate housing assignment. I'll be vacating the property by Sunday, October 27th. I'll leave the keys with building security." "This is unexpected. Is everything okay? Are you leaving the firm?" "No, I'm staying with the firm. I'm simply choosing to decline this particular benefit going forward. I've found alternative housing that better suits my current needs." Most people don't understand how corporate housing actually works. It's not the same as regular residential leasing. When you sign a standard apartment lease, you have tenant rights, eviction processes, notice requirements, sometimes even rent control protections. But corporate housing is structured as an employment benefit, which means it's tied directly to your position within the company. When I made senior partner 3 years ago, the firm leased the penthouse under their corporate account, then assigned it to me as part of my benefits package. The rent was $8,000 per month, but I didn't pay a cent. The firm covered everything as long as I remained a senior partner in good standing and renewed the assignment annually. The critical distinction: the lease wasn't in my name personally. It was in the firm's name, with me listed as the authorized occupant. I wasn't a tenant. I was a beneficiary of a corporate asset. And just like a company car or a corporate credit card, that asset could be reassigned or revoked based on the terms of my employment agreement. "Understood," Robert said, though his tone suggested he didn't understand at all. "I'll process the forfeiture and notify the building management. They'll need to coordinate the key return and final walkthrough. Should I have them contact you directly?" "Yes, please. My personal cell. And Rory? This needs to be processed immediately. I don't want any delays or grace periods. The termination should be effective the moment the lease expires on the 31st. Consider it done. I'll send you the confirmation email within the hour." Second call. Aaron Sparks, the building manager at Grand Avenue Towers. "Ms. Mitchell, how can I help you?" "Aaron, I'm calling to inform you that my corporate housing assignment is being terminated effective October 31st. I'll be coordinating with movers to vacate the unit by the 27th. I'll need to arrange a time for the final walkthrough and key return." "Oh my. This is sudden. Will Mr. Mitchell be accompanying you to the walkthrough?" And there was the question I'd been waiting for. "Actually, Aaron, that's an important detail I need to clarify. Cayson Mitchell has never been listed as an authorized occupant on the corporate housing agreement. He's been residing in the unit as my guest, but he has no legal standing as a tenant or leaseholder." I could hear her typing. "Let me pull up the file. You're right. The only name on the authorization is yours. So when the lease terminates, his access terminates as well," I finished. Effective October 31st, he should be removed from all building systems. Keycard access, parking garage, concierge authorization, everything. He'll be a non-resident as of midnight on Halloween. When a primary residence tenancy ends, any guests or additional occupants who aren't named on the lease have no right to remain in the property. Their permission to be there is derivative. It comes from the primary tenant. When that person's legal right to occupy ends, so does everyone else's. It's that simple. I'll make sure security is notified, Aaron said. Should I have someone available on November 1st in case there are any issues? That would be wise, I said. My guest may attempt to access the property under the mistaken belief that he still has residential rights. I'd appreciate it if your team could redirect him appropriately. We'll handle it with discretion. I ended the call and took a long sip of my espresso. It was 9:47 a.m. Cayson's flight had taken off 12 minutes ago. He was currently 35,000 feet in the air, dreaming about infinity pools and romantic dinners, completely unaware that the home he thought he'd be returning to was being systematically deleted from his future. If you're enjoying watching this plan come together, hit that subscribe button. The next chapter is where Briana starts physically erasing Cayson from the penthouse, and trust me, it's surgical. The thing about revenge isn't that it's a dish best served cold. It's that the coldest revenge is the kind that's perfectly legal, meticulously documented, and absolutely irreversible. Cayson was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Chapter 4. Friday morning, 6:47 a.m. I was already awake, sitting at the dining table with my laptop open and a cup of black coffee cooling beside me. The penthouse was quiet in that specific way expensive apartments are quiet. Triple-pane windows blocking out the city noise, high ceilings absorbing sound, the hum of premium appliances barely audible. In less than 48 hours, this silence would belong to someone else. Cayson's flight had landed in Cabo 9 hours ago. According to the tracking app on our shared phone plan, he was currently at the El Coronado Resort and Spa. I pulled up his credit card activity. Room service charge at 11:34 p.m. local time. $127. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine and chocolate-covered strawberries. How romantic. I opened my email and began typing. To Rory Knight, Property Management Director, Hartwell & Associates. CC. Aaron Sparks, Building Manager, Grand Avenue Towers. Subject. Formal notice. Corporate housing benefit forfeiture. Rory and Aaron. This email serves as formal written notification that I am electing to forfeit my corporate housing benefit at Grand Avenue Towers, Unit 2847, effective October 31, 2025. Per Section 12 of my partnership agreement, I am exercising my right to decline this benefit. I will vacate the premises no later than October 27, 2025, and will return all keys, access cards, and building credentials to building security by 6 p.m. on that date. Please process the following administrative actions immediately. Terminate all building access associated with Unit 2847 effective 11:59 p.m., October 31, 2025. Remove authorization for parking spaces #2847A and #2847B. Discontinue all utility accounts tied to the unit as of the termination date. Coordinate final walkthrough inspection for October 27, 2025, at 5 p.m. I will ensure the unit is returned in its original condition, less normal wear and tear, and will arrange professional cleaning services prior to my departure. Please confirm receipt of this notice and provide written confirmation that all termination procedures have been initiated. Best regards, Briana Mitchell Eskew, Senior Partner, Hartwell & Associates. I read it 3 times, checking for any language that could be misinterpreted. It was perfect. Professional. Legally airtight. And notice what wasn't in the email. Cayson's name. Not once. In corporate and legal communications, you only include parties who have standing, people who have a legal right or relationship to the matter at hand. Cayson had never been an employee of Hartwell & Associates. He'd never signed the corporate housing agreement. His name had never appeared on any official documentation. Mentioning him would have been legally irrelevant. He was a ghost in the system. And ghosts don't have rights. I clicked send. The email whooshed into the void at 6:52 a.m. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with Robert's response. From Rory Knight. Subject. Formal notice. corporate housing benefit forfeiture. Briana. Receipt confirmed. I've initiated the termination procedures and notified our legal department. Aaron will coordinate the final walkthrough. Just to confirm, you're permanently declining this benefit? It's a significant portion of your compensation package and once forfeited, reinstatement requires board approval. Please advise if you'd like to discuss alternatives. Best. Rory. I appreciated his concern, but this wasn't impulsive. This was the most calculated decision I'd made in years. Rory. Confirmed. This is a permanent forfeiture. I've secured alternative housing that better aligns with my current personal circumstances. No further discussion necessary. Please proceed with termination as outlined. Thank you, Briana. Current personal circumstances. Vague enough to avoid details, specific enough to signal that something had changed. If anyone asked later, HR, the partners, even Cayson's divorce attorney, I could point to this email and say I made this decision based on my personal needs. Because technically I did. The fact that this decision would render my husband homeless was just a collateral consequence. In contract law, if you make a decision for valid business or personal reasons, you're not liable for the negative impact that decision has on third parties, especially third parties who have no contractual relationship with you. Cayson wasn't on the lease. He wasn't on my employment contract. He had no legal connection to this property. When I chose to forfeit my housing benefit, I was within my rights. The fact that it destroyed his living situation was his problem, not mine. At 7:14 a.m. Aaron Sparks responded. From Aaron Sparks. Subject. Formal notice. Corporate housing benefit forfeiture. Ms. Mitchell. All building access termination requests have been logged. Effective 11:59 p.m. on October 31st, the following will be deactivated. Keycard access for Unit 2847. Parking gate credentials for spaces 2847A and 2847B. Elevator authorization for residential floors. Concierge guest list entries. Package receiving privileges. Our security team has been notified. If anyone attempts to access the unit after the termination date, they will be directed to building management and, if necessary, escorted from the premises. Final walkthrough confirmed for October 27th at 5 p.m. Regards, Aaron Sparks. If anyone attempts to access the unit, was Aaron's professional way of acknowledging what we both knew. Cayson was going to show up Monday afternoon, exhausted from his flight, expecting to walk into his home. Instead, he'd be met with a blinking red light and a very confused security guard. The beautiful part? Aaron hadn't asked about Cayson. She hadn't said, "What about your husband?" Because legally, professionally, from the building's perspective, Cayson Mitchell was nobody. He was just a person who'd been living in Unit 2847 as a guest of the authorized occupant. And when that occupant's authorization ended, so did his. I opened a new email to my moving company, confirming the 8 a.m. Saturday appointment and attaching a detailed inventory spreadsheet. The spreadsheet had 2 columns, Briana's property and guest property. Guest. Not husband. Not spouse. Guest. Word choice matters in documentation. Husband implies legal rights. Spouse implies shared ownership. Guest implies temporary permission that can be revoked at any time. At 8 a.m. my doorbell rang. The movers had arrived exactly on time. If you want to see exactly how Briana separates 3 years of marriage into mine and yours, and trust me, the level of detail is absolutely ruthless, smash that like button right now. Comment below and tell me whose side you're on, Team Briana or Team Cayson. Because the next chapter is where the physical erasure begins. I saved all my email drafts, closed my laptop and walked to the door. The apartment was about to be transformed from a home into evidence of a failed marriage. And every single piece was going to be catalogued, boxed, and removed with surgical precision. I opened the door to 3 men in platinum elite moving uniforms holding clipboards and rolls of packing tape. Ms. Mitchell. That's me. Come in. By Sunday evening, this penthouse would be empty. By Monday afternoon, Cayson would discover that everything he thought was permanent had been nothing but a temporary loan. And every single action I'd taken was completely legal, fully documented, and absolutely irreversible. Chapter 5. The movers worked through the penthouse like a surgical team, wrapping and boxing with practiced efficiency. I stood in the center of the living room with my inventory spreadsheet and a red pen, checking off items as they were categorized, packed, and labeled. The sectional sofa, the lead mover asked, gesturing to the massive gray L-shaped couch that dominated the living room. It had cost $6,400. Cayson had picked it out, claiming it was essential for hosting clients. We'd hosted clients exactly 0 times. But he'd spent countless hours sprawled across it, watching basketball games and scrolling through his phone while I worked late at the office. I checked my purchase records. Transaction date: February 14, 2024. Credit card: mine. That's mine, I said. But I'm not keeping it. Contact the consignment dealer I sent you yesterday. Platinum Modern Furniture. They'll pick it up directly and cut me a check within 48 hours. The mover made a note. And the dining table? Solid walnut, seats 8, purchased for $4,200. Cayson had wanted it because it looked successful. It looked successful because I'd paid for it. Same thing. Consignment. Just because you paid for something doesn't mean you have to keep it, especially when that item represents a life you're actively leaving behind. Furniture holds emotional weight. Every time you look at that couch, you remember the person who sat on it. Every time you sit at that table, you remember the fake conversations that happened there. When you're rebuilding your life, the last thing you need is physical reminders of your failure to see what was right in front of you. So I was liquidating everything. The couch. The dining table. The coffee table Cayson had insisted we buy. The bar cart he'd stocked with expensive whiskey he pretended to understand. The decorative objects he'd scattered around to create the illusion of sophistication. All of it was going to consignment, where it would be sold to other people trying to buy their way into looking successful. And the money? Straight into my personal investment account, the one Cayson had never had access to. Bedroom furniture? Another mover called from down the hall. I walked into the primary bedroom and cross-referenced every item against my purchase history. Bed, mine. Purchased April 2023, $3,800. Nightstands, mine. Purchased same day, $600 each. Dresser, mine. Purchased June 2023, $2,100. All of it goes to consignment, I said. I want a completely fresh start. In California, property acquired during marriage is generally considered community property. It belongs equally to both spouses. However, if you can prove that specific items were purchased with separate property funds, or if you can document that they were gifts to one spouse specifically, they remain separate property. I had kept meticulous records. Every furniture receipt had my name on it. Every credit card statement showed purchases made from my individual account, not our joint account. Legally, this furniture was mine, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. I moved to Cayson's closet. His clothes hung in neat rows. The linen shirts, the tailored slacks, the Italian leather shoes, the cashmere sweaters. All of it purchased by me because Cayson's consulting business had never generated enough revenue to cover his lifestyle ambitions. Everything in this closet goes to storage, I told the movers. Pack it carefully. Label every box with C. Mitchell Personal Property. I want an itemized inventory of every single piece. Yes, ma'am. I wasn't stealing his clothes. I wasn't donating them or destroying them. I was preserving them in a temperature-controlled storage facility that I was paying for. In divorce proceedings, this would demonstrate that I'd acted in good faith, that I'd protected his property, that I'd given him every opportunity to retrieve his belongings. It was the legal equivalent of saying, I'm not the villain here. I'm just the person who stopped subsidizing your life. The movers worked methodically. By 2 p.m. the living room was empty. By 4 p.m. the bedroom had been stripped to bare walls. By 6 p.m. my entire life, the parts one was keeping, had been loaded into a truck destined for an address Cayson would never know. The new brownstone was in a different neighborhood, under a private rental agreement with a landlord who'd been recommended by a colleague. No corporate ties. No public records that could be easily traced. Just a standard lease in my name, paid for with my personal funds, in a building with excellent security. I'd learned my lesson about mixing professional benefits with personal life. This time everything would be separate. Everything would be mine. The consignment dealer arrived at 6:30 p.m. Marcus Chin from Platinum Modern Furniture walked through the apartment, assessing each piece. The sectional will move quickly, he said. Probably $3,200, maybe $3,500. The dining table, depending on condition, $2,400 to $2,800. The bedroom set collectively around $2,000. If everything sold at mid-range estimates, I'd recoup approximately $8,000. Not quite what I'd paid, but close enough. And more importantly, I'd be free of the physical evidence of my marriage. When can you have the checks ready? Items will be listed tomorrow. Based on current market, I'd estimate 7 to 10 days for full sale and payment. Perfect. He handed me a contract. I read it carefully, every clause, every contingency, every liability waiver, before signing. Even in moments of emotional upheaval, you never stop reading the fine print. By 9 p.m. on Saturday night, the penthouse looked stripped. Walls were bare. Floors were cleared. The only things remaining were Cayson's belongings, neatly boxed and labeled, stacked in what used to be the guest bedroom. 47 boxes. That's what 3 years of his life in my home amounted to. I stood in the empty living room and pulled out my phone. I took photos of every room. Empty walls. Bare floors. The boxes stacked with labels visible. Documentation. Evidence that I'd done everything by the book. Then I called the storage facility. Yes, this is Briana Mitchell. I have a pickup scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. 47 boxes, all labeled. The storage unit is reserved under account number 8472025. The access code should be set to my phone number only. Confirmed, Ms. Mitchell. Our team will handle pickup and delivery. The unit will be locked, and only you will have access unless you authorize additional parties. By placing his belongings in a storage unit under my control, I was fulfilling my legal obligation to preserve marital property during separation. But by restricting access to myself only, I was ensuring he couldn't retrieve anything without my permission. Which meant he'd have to contact me. Which meant he'd have to negotiate. Which meant he'd have to acknowledge that his entire life was now subject to my approval. Let me know in the comments what you think is going through Cayson's mind right now as he's lounging in Cabo with Whitney. Does he suspect anything? Or is he completely oblivious? Drop your thoughts below. I left the penthouse at 10:47 p.m., taking one last look at the space that had represented everything Cayson thought he'd built. The floor-to-ceiling windows. The city view. The luxury address. All of it had been mine. He'd just been living in it. Tomorrow my belongings would be in the brownstone. Cayson's boxes would be locked in storage. And by Sunday night this chapter would be completely closed. Unit 2847 would be empty, ready to revert to Hartwell and Associates on October 31st. And Cayson would return from Cabo to discover that the image he'd been living in had been liquidated, boxed up, and deleted from his reality. Chapter 6. Saturday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. I was in my car outside the new brownstone, watching the movers unload the last of my furniture, when I decided it was time for the financial phase. Cayson had been in Cabo for 2 full days. According to the credit card alerts on my phone, he'd already spent $2,847 of our money. Resort charges, restaurant bills, spa treatments, jet ski rentals. Every swipe was another transaction I'd never authorized for his romantic vacation. I pulled up the banking app and navigated to our joint checking account. Current balance, $47,293. 3 months of my salary deposits, minus Cayson's steady withdrawal for his business expenses that never resulted in any actual business. Then I opened the credit card account. The Apple Card we'd opened together 2 years ago. Current balance, $8,447. And climbing. When you have joint accounts, checking, credit cards, savings, both parties have equal legal access. Either person can deposit, withdraw, or spend without the other's permission. But that also means either person can freeze, close, or restrict access to protect against unauthorized use. And unauthorized use is beautifully flexible. If your partner is using shared funds in a way that wasn't mutually agreed upon, like funding a secret vacation with their mistress, that's technically unauthorized use, even if they have legal access to the account. I dialed the number on the back of our Apple Card. Apple Card customer service, this is Derek speaking. How can I help you today? Yes, hello. My name is Briana Mitchell. I'm calling about a potentially compromised card ending in 4738. After verifying my identity, Derek pulled up my account. You mentioned the card might be compromised? Yes. I've been reviewing recent transactions and I'm seeing charges from Mexico that I didn't authorize. My card is currently in my possession, which suggests someone may have access to the account information. This wasn't technically a lie. I was seeing charges from Mexico. I hadn't authorized them, because Cayson had never asked permission to use our joint card to fund a romantic vacation with another woman. And while I knew exactly who was making those charges, the bank didn't need those details. When you report a card as potentially compromised, you're not accusing anyone of fraud. You're simply stating that you've observed suspicious activity that warrants investigation. Banks are required to take these reports seriously and protect the cardholder by freezing the account. I understand your concern, Derek said. I'm seeing several charges from Cabo San Lucas over the past 2 days. Resort, restaurants, activities. Were these not your charges? Correct. I'm currently in California. I haven't traveled to Mexico and I didn't authorize anyone else to use this card for international travel. In situations like this, our policy is to immediately freeze the card to prevent further unauthorized charges. I'll issue that freeze right now. The card ending in 4738 will be declined for any new transactions as of this moment. That's perfect. Thank you, Derek. I hung up and immediately called our joint bank. First National Bank, Fraud Department, this is Vanessa. Hi Vanessa, this is Briana Mitchell. I need to report suspicious activity on my joint checking account ending in 2847. Of course. Can you describe the suspicious activity? I've been monitoring the account, and I'm seeing a pattern of withdrawals that don't align with our normal spending. Given that my credit card was just compromised, I'm concerned that someone may have gained access to our banking credentials as well. Account holders have the right to place security holds on their own accounts as a protective measure. You don't need to prove fraud has occurred, you just need to demonstrate reasonable concern that it might occur. Given that I just reported a compromised credit card, it was entirely reasonable to extend that concern to our other accounts. I can place an administrative hold on the account immediately, Vanessa said. This will prevent any withdrawals, transfers, or debit card transactions until the hold is lifted. You'll still be able to see activity, but no funds can be moved. Perfect. How long does the hold last? The initial hold is for 7 business days. 7 business days. Cayson was coming back Monday, 4 days from now. By the time he landed, discovered he was homeless and tried to access funds for a hotel, he'd find every account frozen. Please implement the hold immediately. Done. Is there anything else I can help you with? Actually, yes. I'd like to remove the secondary cardholder from this account. Ms. Mitchell, this is a joint account, which means both parties have equal ownership. I can't unilaterally remove a joint owner without their consent or a court order. I'd expected this. But you can cancel his debit card and revoke his online banking access, correct? As the primary account holder, your name is listed first. You do have authority to manage access credentials. I can deactivate his physical debit card and revoke his online banking permissions. Please do that. I wasn't removing Cayson as a joint owner. I couldn't do that unilaterally. But I could remove his ability to access the funds through cards and online portals. He'd still technically own half the money, but he wouldn't be able to touch it. It's like owning a car but not having the keys. The ownership is there on paper, but the practical access is gone. I've deactivated the card ending in 8392 and suspended the associated online banking profile, Vanessa confirmed. He'll receive a notification about the security hold, but he won't be able to access the account until the hold is lifted or until he contacts us directly. Thank you. I hung up and sat in my car letting the magnitude settle. In 20 minutes, I had effectively cut off Cayson's access to every shared financial resource. The credit card he was using in Cabo would be declined. The checking account was frozen. His debit card was deactivated. His online banking was suspended. He was sitting on a beach somewhere, probably ordering drinks for himself and Whitney, completely unaware that his financial life was being systematically deleted. I checked the credit card app one more time. There it was, El Coronado Resort and Spa Restaurant charge $312 pending. That charge would go through. But the next one wouldn't. I texted my attorney. Phase 3 complete. All joint financial accounts secured. He'll be without access by Monday afternoon. Rebecca's response came immediately. Impressive. Divorce papers are ready. Process server is on standby for Monday evening. I stepped out of my car and walked into my new brownstone. The movers had finished and my furniture was arranged, waiting to be positioned exactly how I wanted it. This space was mine. Paid for with my money. Secured under my name. Free from any connection to Cayson or his fraudulent lifestyle. My phone buzzed. Transaction declined. El Coronado Resort and Spa, $847. He just tried to pay for something expensive. Maybe another spa package. Maybe jet ski rentals. And his card had been declined. If you want to see Cayson's exact reaction when he realizes all his cards aren't working and what Whitney does when she finds out he's broke, you need to subscribe right now. Because the next chapter is the moment everything comes crashing down, and it's absolutely devastating. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat down in my new living room. Cayson thought he could have it all. Keep me as the financial provider while enjoying his mistress on the side. But he'd forgotten the most fundamental rule. The person who controls the money controls everything. And I'd just taken all of it away. Chapter 7. Monday, November 1st, 2:47 p.m. I was in my new brownstone office, reviewing a commercial lease for a client, when my phone buzzed with a text from Aaron Sparks. He's here. Attempting access now. Security is handling it per your instructions. I set down my pen and pulled up the building's security camera app on my tablet, a feature I'd requested on Friday as part of my final walkthrough documentation. Aaron had granted it and I knew exactly why. He wanted to watch this unfold professionally. The camera feed showed the main lobby. And there he was. Cayson Mitchell rolling his leather weekender behind him, sunburned and visibly exhausted from the red-eye flight. He was wearing one of the linen shirts I'd bought him, now wrinkled from travel. His hair was messy. He looked like a man who'd spent 6 days drinking margaritas and was ready to collapse into his own bed. Except it wasn't his bed anymore. I watched as he approached the security turnstiles, the ones requiring keycard access to reach the residential elevators. He pulled his wallet out, extracted his access card and tapped it against the reader. The light flashed red. A harsh beep echoed through the lobby. Access denied. Cayson frowned. He tapped again. Red light. Another beep. He looked confused, glancing around as if the problem might be with the reader. He tried a third time, pressing firmly. Red. Beep. Denied. Building access cards aren't just physical keys. They're digital credentials tied to a database. When Patricia deactivated his card at 11:59 p.m. on October 31st, his credentials were deleted from the system. That card he was holding was just a piece of plastic. The data no longer matched any active resident profile. From the building's perspective, Cayson Mitchell didn't exist. I watched him walk toward the concierge desk, confusion turning to irritation. Landon, the afternoon concierge, looked up with professional neutrality. "Excuse me," Cayson said, voice carrying that edge of entitled frustration. "My keycard isn't working. I need to get up to my unit, 2847. Landon typed into his computer, face carefully blank. "Can I have your name, sir?" "Cayson Mitchell. I live in 2847. More typing. A long pause. Then Landon looked up, expression sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, but according to our records, you're not listed as a resident or authorized guest for Unit 2847. Cayson blinked. "What? That's impossible. I've lived here for 3 years. "I understand this is confusing, sir, but the lease for Unit 2847 was terminated effective October 31st at midnight. The unit has been returned to corporate inventory." "Terminated? By who?" "By the authorized tenant, Ms. Briana Mitchell." I watched Cayson's face change in real time. Confusion gave way to disbelief, then panic, then anger. It was like watching someone's entire reality shatter in 5 seconds. Make sure you're subscribed because this confrontation is about to explode. Drop a comment and tell me what you think Cayson's going to say when he finally gets Briana on the phone. "Where is Briana?" Cayson demanded. "Is she upstairs? I need to talk to her." Ms. Mitchell completed her move out on October 27th. She no longer resides at this property. Move out? What the hell are you talking about? Where did she go? Landon maintained his composure. I'm not at liberty to share that information, sir. What I can tell you is that you're no longer authorized to access the residential floors. If you'd like to discuss this further, I'd recommend contacting Ms. Mitchell directly. This is insane. My stuff is up there. All my clothes, my laptop, everything. According to our records, all personal property was removed from the unit prior to termination. If you have belongings that need to be retrieved, you'll need to coordinate that with Ms. Mitchell. This is constructive eviction, executed perfectly and completely legally. Briana didn't throw his belongings on the street. She didn't change locks while he was gone, because the locks were never his to begin with. She simply exercised her contractual right to terminate a corporate housing benefit. As a consequence, his derivative access ended. Everything done through proper channels with proper notice, following the exact terms of the agreement. Cayson pulled out his phone and jabbed at the screen. I knew exactly what he was doing, calling me. My phone started ringing. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered, voice professionally pleasant. Hello, Cayson. How was Cabo? The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, what the hell is going on, Briana? I'm standing in the lobby of our building and they're telling me I don't live here anymore. They're saying you moved out. They won't let me up to the apartment. It's not our building, Cayson. It never was. And it's not an apartment. It was corporate housing assigned to me as part of my partnership benefits. I terminated that benefit on October 31st. You what? I forfeited the corporate housing assignment. The unit reverted to Hartwell and Associates. You should have received an email notification about the lease termination. Oh wait. That email went to the corporate account which only had my name on it. I suppose you wouldn't have seen it. You can't just, where are my things? Where's all our furniture? Your belongings are in a climate-controlled storage facility. Unit 2847 at Secure Store on Industrial Boulevard. You can access them by contacting me to arrange retrieval. As for our furniture, there was no our furniture. Every piece in that apartment was purchased by me with my money from my accounts. I sold most of it through consignment. I kept what I wanted for my new residence. Your new residence? Where the hell is that? That's not information I'm sharing with you at this time. His voice was rising, panic fully setting in. Briana, I just got off a 10-hour flight. I'm exhausted. I need to go home. I need to shower and sleep and... You need to find a hotel, I said, voice still perfectly calm. Because you don't have a home here anymore. This is insane. You can't just kick me out of my own home. It was never your home, Cayson. You were never on the lease. You never paid rent. You never signed any housing agreements. You were living in a property assigned to me as an employment benefit, and I've terminated that benefit. You had no legal claim to that residence. What about my cards? I tried to use our credit card in Cabo and it was declined. I tried to get cash from an ATM this morning and my debit card doesn't work. What did you do? I reported our credit card as potentially compromised after I noticed unauthorized charges from Mexico. The bank froze it for security purposes. As for the checking account, I placed a security hold after the credit card incident. Standard fraud protection protocol. Unauthorized charges? I was using that card. You knew I was in Cabo. Did I? You told me you were attending an investor summit. You showed me an itinerary for a business conference. How was I supposed to know you were actually on a romantic vacation with Whitney Harrington? Complete devastating silence. Oh yes, Cayson, I know about Whitney. I've known since October 23rd. I know about the jewelry you bought her with my money. I know about the couple's spa packages. I know she was on that flight with you. I know everything. His voice when he finally spoke was barely above a whisper. Briana, listen, I can explain. I don't need explanations. I need you to understand your current situation. You have no access to our former residence. You have no access to our joint accounts. You have no credit cards that work. Your belongings are in storage and I'm the only person with the access code. You're standing in a lobby where you're now considered a non-resident. So here's what's going to happen next. I paused, letting the weight sink in. There's a locker at the Greyhound bus station on 7th Street. Locker number 2847. The code is your birthday. No zeros, just 6 digits. Inside that locker you'll find one suitcase with enough clothes for a week, your laptop, your charger, and $500 in cash. That should be sufficient for you to secure temporary housing while we proceed with divorce proceedings. Divorce. You'll be served with papers this evening. My attorney will contact you with instructions for mediation. If you cooperate and we can reach an amicable settlement, this can be relatively painless. If you choose to fight me, you'll discover very quickly that I have 3 years of financial records documenting every dollar you spent of my money on your affair. California law allows me to seek reimbursement for dissipation of marital assets. In California, dissipation of marital assets means one spouse wastes community property on an extramarital affair. Courts can order the cheating spouse to reimburse the other spouse for funds spent on the affair. Those Cabo charges? The jewelry? The romantic dinners? All of it could be recouped with interest. Briana, please, can we just talk about this? I made a mistake. I can fix this. The time for talking was before you booked a romantic vacation with another woman using my credit card. The time for fixing things was before you spent 3 years pretending to build a business while spending my money. You made your choices, Cayson. Now you get to live with the consequences. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. But I'd suggest you call Whitney. I'm sure she'll be happy to host you. Although you might want to tell her that the lifestyle you've been funding is over. No more expensive dinners. No more luxury vacations. No more designer clothes. Because all of that was my money. And you don't have access to it anymore. Comment below and tell me what you think Whitney's reaction is going to be when Cayson shows up broke. And if you want to see the final chapter where we find out what happens in the divorce settlement, hit that subscribe button now. I hung up. On my tablet, I watched Cayson standing in the lobby, phone still pressed to his ear, face a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. Marcus approached him carefully. Sir, I'm going to need to ask you to leave the building. If you refuse, I'll have to contact security. Cayson looked around the lobby. The marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the floor-to-ceiling windows with the city view. All the trappings of success he'd been living in for 3 years. None of it his. None of it ever his. He grabbed his suitcase and walked toward the exit, shoulders slumped, the weight finally registering. The sliding glass doors closed behind him and he disappeared onto the street. I closed the security app and returned to my work. I had a client meeting at 4 p.m. and a dinner reservation to celebrate my new life. Cayson had choices to make now. Where to sleep tonight? How to explain to Whitney that he was suddenly broke? How to tell people his marriage had imploded? How to rebuild a life he'd never actually built in the first place? But those were his problems. I'd given him exactly what he deserved. A locker at a bus station, $500, and a wake-up call. Chapter 8. 3 weeks later, I sat in Rebecca Hahn's conference room on the 42nd floor of the Wilshire Tower, reviewing the final divorce settlement documents. The city stretched out below us, late November sun casting long shadows across downtown. Everything was exactly as I'd planned it. Rebecca slid the agreement across the glass table. This is the cleanest divorce settlement I've ever negotiated. Cayson's attorney tried to push for spousal support and community property division, but once we presented the financial records documenting the affair-related expenses, they folded immediately. I scanned the terms. Division of assets. All separate property remains separate. Briana Mitchell retains 100% ownership of all furniture, vehicles, and personal property purchased with her separate funds. Spousal support, waived by both parties. Reimbursement for dissipation. Cayson Mitchell agrees to repay Briana Mitchell $11,400 for documented affair-related expenses, payable over 24 months at $475 per month. Debt allocation. Cayson Mitchell assumes sole responsibility for his personal credit cards and debts incurred in his name. Property settlement. No community property to divide. All assets properly documented as separate property. I'd won. Completely. He signed this. I asked. This morning. He didn't have much choice. His attorney explained that if we went to trial, the court would likely award you even more in reimbursements, plus attorney's fees. The affair evidence was damning. The financial records were bulletproof. Documentation wins cases. Every receipt I'd kept, every credit card statement I'd saved, every bank record I'd maintained became evidence in my favor. While Cayson had been living carelessly, I'd been building an airtight legal case without him knowing it. Always keep financial records. Always document large purchases. Always maintain separate accounts when possible. Where's he living now? Rebecca smirked. According to his attorney, he's been staying with Whitney. Apparently, that relationship deteriorated rapidly once she discovered he was actually broke. Last I heard, he's renting a room in a house in Van Nuys, sharing a bathroom with 3 other people. He picked up work as a sales associate at a tech retail store. From a luxury penthouse to a shared rental in the valley. From visionary entrepreneur to retail sales. The fall was spectacular. And the storage unit? He retrieved his belongings 2 weeks ago. All 47 boxes. Had to rent a U-Haul and make multiple trips because he couldn't afford movers. I signed the settlement agreement, signature sharp and decisive. Briana Mitchell, represented by Rebecca Hahn-Eskew. It was the last legal document that would ever connect me to Cayson Mitchell. There's one more thing, Rebecca said, pulling out her phone. His LinkedIn profile. She turned the screen toward me. Cayson's professional headshot, the one I'd paid for, was still there, but everything else had changed. Title: Sales Consultant, Consumer Electronics. Summary: Experienced sales professional seeking opportunities in retail management. The comments section told the real story. People asking what happened to his consulting firm. Old contacts expressing surprise at his career transition. And Whitney had unfriended him entirely. When the money runs out, so do the relationships built on that money. Whitney hadn't fallen in love with Cayson. She'd fallen in love with expensive dinners, luxury vacations, the image of success. The moment that image shattered, she disappeared. Relationships built on material foundations crumble the instant those foundations are removed. If you've been following this story and you want to hear what lessons you should take away, keep watching. And make sure you subscribe, because we break down real stories about people who refused to be victims and chose to be strategists instead. So what's next for you? Rebecca asked. I'm buying property. There's a commercial building in the arts district I've had my eye on. Converting the ground floor into office space for my own practice. Upstairs will be residential, a real home, not corporate housing. Something that's actually mine. You're leaving Hartwell? Opening my own firm. Mitchell Real Estate Law. I've already secured 3 clients from my old portfolio. Turns out, when you're good at what you do, clients follow you. Your value isn't tied to your company, it's tied to your skills and your reputation. I'd spent years building expertise, relationships, and a track record. That expertise didn't belong to Hartwell and Associates. It belonged to me. What about dating? I laughed. Not remotely. I'm in my villain era right now. I'm buying property, building businesses, and enjoying the fact that every decision I make is mine alone. Maybe in a year or 2. But right now, I'm focused on me. We shook hands and I left with the signed settlement in my portfolio. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa, my former assistant who'd come with me to my new firm. The Arts District building owner accepted your offer. Congratulations, boss. You're officially a property owner. I stopped on the sidewalk, letting that sink in. 6 weeks ago, I'd been married to a man using my money to fund an affair. Living in corporate housing that could be taken away at any moment. Providing for someone who saw me as a wallet, not a partner. No. I own my own building. I was launching my own firm. I'd exited a toxic marriage with my finances intact and my dignity restored. And Cayson, the man who thought he was so clever, was living in a shared rental, working retail, and paying me $475 a month for the privilege of having lied to me. Power in relationships comes from understanding the systems that govern them. Contracts, leases, bank accounts, corporate policies, legal procedures. When you understand these systems, you can navigate them strategically. When you don't, you're at the mercy of people who do. Cayson ignored the fine print. He assumed the lifestyle I provided was permanent, that his access was guaranteed, that his actions wouldn't have consequences. He was wrong on all counts. I walked to my Mercedes, now titled solely in my name, and drove to the Arts District to see my new property. The building was perfect. Brick facade. High ceilings. Natural light flooding through industrial windows. It needed work, but it had good bones. Just like me. I'd spent 3 years being the foundation for someone else's fake empire. Now I was building my own. My phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Mitchell? This is David Edwards from Bloomberg. I'm working on a profile piece about women in real estate law, and your name came up repeatedly. Would you be interested in an interview? I smiled. I'd be happy to. When would you like to schedule it? How's next Tuesday? Tuesday works perfectly. I hung up and stood in front of my building, and thought about the journey, the discovery, the planning, the execution, the settlement, the rebuild. Cayson had thought he was playing me. He thought I was too busy, too trusting, too invested to notice his betrayal. He thought he could keep the successful wife for money and status while enjoying the mistress for excitement. But he'd made one fatal miscalculation. He'd assumed I needed him more than he needed me. He was wrong. If you made it to the end, thank you for being here. Drop a comment and let me know your biggest takeaway. Was it the legal strategies? The financial planning? The importance of documentation? And subscribe to this channel because we break down more stories about people who understand that knowledge is power, contracts are weapons, and the person who reads the fine print always wins. 6 months later, I ran into Cayson at a coffee shop downtown. He was wearing a polo shirt with a retail store logo, clearly on his lunch break. His sunburn had faded, but he looked older, tired, diminished. He saw me and froze. I walked past him to the counter, ordered my espresso, and didn't acknowledge him at all. Because he was no longer someone who deserved my attention, my anger, or my energy. He was just a person I used to know who learned, too late, that you should always check the expiration date on the things you take for granted. I took my coffee and walked out into the sunlight, back to my firm, my building, my life. The life I'd built. The life I controlled. The life that was finally, completely, and irrevocably mine. Cayson Mitchell continues to work in retail sales. His LinkedIn no longer mentions his consulting firm. Whitney married someone else 6 months after their breakup. A software engineer with a documented income. Briana Mitchell's firm, Mitchell Real Estate Law, secured 8 major clients in its first year. She was featured in Forbes' 30 Most Influential Women in Real Estate Law. She still lives in her Arts District building and has never remarried. She still checks expiration dates on everything. And she still reads every word of every contract before she signs. And if this story taught you anything about protecting yourself legally, financially, or emotionally, I want to hear from you. Comment below with your biggest lesson. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, in any relationship, the person who understands the contract controls the outcome. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.